Hi, this is Rachel Cunningham, and you're listening to Joyful Love, episode 63. If you're ready to bring joy and connection back to your marriage, stick around. Each week, I give you the tools to up-level your thinking, open your heart, and bring joy and fun back to your relationship. Because it's not enough just to stay married. We want to love being married. So hello, everyone. I am super glad to be here this week because today I am welcoming Candy Wright to the show. She's a life coach who helps women to create a joyful and healing long-term relationship with food and their bodies. So welcome, Candy.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So let's just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, your story, and what led you to life coach women on their health.
Great question. It all started honestly back when I was about 9 years old, and there was some painful stuff going on in the house, and I started emotionally eating. I started soothing with food. I can see this now, didn't obviously realize it when I was 9, right? And I put myself on my first diet when I was 12, and then I kind of went through this a little kind of bouts of bulimia and just body dislike, body hate sometimes, just this inner turmoil. And so throughout the years, I was able to kind of keep trim because of that, kind of the inner critic saying, if you don't, keep trim, then you're not going to be okay in society, which so many of us are inculcated with and conditioned with, just being a woman in Western culture and almost any culture these days, right?
Yeah.
And so, but when I started to hit my perimenopausal years, things shifted. So perimenopause for most women starts to hit around the very late 30s, early 40s. And my body started changing. And I was like, what the heck? I tried every diet under the sun.
Yeah.
And I actually gained about 65 pounds. I had gotten married, gotten foster kiddos, stress went through the roof. I learned to intermittent fast. Long story short, I tried lots and lots of different things throughout my 40s and thought I'd gotten it to a place where I was like, okay, I can do some intermittent fasting, I'm getting my macros, whatever. But then my body went into menopause, and that inner critic, I swear she came out screaming with a vengeance.
Wow.
And my body was just like, no, this is not working for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the combination of intermittent fasting plus working out, and I didn't realize that I was underfeeding for what my body needed as the transition and all the things and the amount I was working out. My adrenals completely crashed. And it was in this time period I had learned about thought work, but then I had to start learning about what was going on with my nervous system, accumulated trauma, not to mention what was going on with my hormones, all these things, and menopause doula work. And it was in this process that I learned, oh my gosh, this is so much deeper. And this menopause transition, so many of us women are blindsided by it. I have a friend right now that's like taking a step back in her business. We don't realize, but a lot of us are like, oh my gosh, I have no energy. And that's really what kind of happened to me for 2.5 years. I'm still not completely on the other side, although I've been postmenopausal for about 1.5 years. The hormones change for a really long time.
Right.
But the reason I'm here is because I finally was able to, through this transition, even though my hormones are still kind of going wonky, I finally got to this place of really understanding what was going on with my body, nutritionally, emotionally, mentally, physically, hormonally. And we finally created this really loving relationship together. And it feels like a queenly relationship instead of like this adversarial little relationship that I'd had for so many years. And so it's really joyful to have that peace inside around my body, around food. And it's not just around body and food, it's around just understanding who you are and like who you're going to become for the next phases of your existence on the planet. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I love the way you're tying all of that in. And then I often teach on here that we can't just look at one aspect of our lives. We can't just look at like, oh, it's mindset work, or it's the way you do your calendar. It's really, I mean, it's everything. And if your body doesn't feel good, you cannot force yourself to do a good strategy, and you can't force yourself to do enough mindset work if your body is out of whack. And so like we have to tie it all in. But then like even like you said earlier of working on just your mindset around food, we can't even do that if we don't understand what our body needs.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do that if we're emotionally driven to buffer and numb our emotions. So can you speak a little bit on that?
I think it's really important to talk about just the tools that are available are many, right? And I think it is really important to have an understanding of how mindset does affect everything in general. And to your point, we are more than just a brain. We are so much more than just a brain. We are so much more than just a thought, just thoughts and whatnot. We've got all these hormones and all these chemicals, and what can happen if we say, especially when these hormones start to change. And I want to put a little caveat on here because every woman's experience is going to be different. I think it's really important for every woman to know that as of last year, the research was showing about 20% of women will go through like their perimenopause, menopause change, kind of just like da, 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 da. And then about 60% of us will kind of go in like up and down, and we'll have some symptoms and it'll be like, oh, a bit jarring. And then there are about 20% of us that literally get hit by a Mack truck. It takes us out of life. So I want to honor, number one, that every woman's experience is different. Now, with that, just kind of having that said, when we're more in like that 60 to 20%, and even the first 20%, the gals, they go through things too. They don't realize it, that they're doing it, but specifically the 60, so about 80% of us, right? If we sit here and don't understand what's going on chemically in our bodies and hormonally in our bodies, and we've got this toolbox of like mindset, hey, I should be able to kind of think more positively, or, I should be able to change some of the things I'm thinking, etc. And your body chemistry is screaming something different. We can really do a lot of trauma on ourselves, like some self-abuse, because we're like, oh, I should be able to think more positively, or, think different thoughts or whatever it might be. And the body chemistry is saying, hey, girlfriend, we are going through a major brain rewiring here.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, you have been living with years of toxic masculine productivity, not to mention perfectionism and people pleasing. And let's not talk about that painful thing that's been in the back of your nervous system, that's caused your nervous system to be in a low grade nervous system response forever. And so then when your estrogen and your progesterone that are an emotional buffer for you, when those start to dissipate and your ovaries are like, I'm out, the adrenals are supposed to take over for your ovaries in terms of estrogen and progesterone and some testosterone production, but at a much lesser, slightly changed level and changed chemical structure. But if they're so busy handling all the stress hormones and, most women in Western culture, we've got like a million things on our plate, especially in midlife too. And so it's like the adrenals are like, I'm sorry, we can't produce your hormones. So we're going to go through a really huge like mood crash swing,
Right.
because all they're doing is like keeping up with the adrenaline and the cortisol that they're, managing type of a thing.
Yeah.
So to think that we can just say, oh, I should be able to think more positively, or, a mindset type of thing on top of that, it's really doing us a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
And so speaking to your point about understanding like what the body needs, I think, in my opinion, and just I speak from my personal experience and the women that I work with, we don't realize that the body actually knows how to take care of itself. And by trying to kind of slap a positive thought on it, it's really not honoring what the body is trying to offer us.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things that I've taken out of my menopause transition, is like, oh my gosh, my body's so wise and she loves me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And she has been trying to get my attention for so long. And she really wanted me to know that, hey, we can do this together. Stop trying to like push me. Stop trying to like override me. Stop trying to tell me just to think better, because I actually know what's going on with the hormones. And if you slow down, I can help you figure this out. And that's what happens.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I love that. So you said if we slow down, tell me more about that. Like if someone is noticing their energy drop, their moods being more up and down, they're just continuing rushing through life as we do as women. We have family, we have work, we have houses, we have everybody's emotions that we think we have to manage besides our own. And so as you know, people who are listening, as they are thinking, yeah, my energy has been really dropping this year or the last few years, what would that first piece be? What would your first advice for them be to start to do?
Yeah. Number one is just to trust that there's a really, really good reason for it. Because what starts to happen, even with just anybody's perimenopausal and menopausal transition, because of the drop in the hormones, it puts the nervous system into a slightly low grade survival response. So it's a stressor on the nervous system in and of itself. So the very first thing that I would recommend to people is understanding that your body is actually going through a very natural process. And number two, you're probably not prepared for it. I got some books I can recommend, but your body actually knows what it's doing. And when it's tired, it needs you to listen. There's a really big reason. Everything inside of you is saying, hey, we're getting ready. It's just, honestly, it's like a pregnancy. I've never been pregnant myself, but I have gone through puberty and I had really intense PMS. Yeah. But it's a pregnancy in terms of our body is going through such a huge hormonal flux, and your brain is too. It's getting totally rewired. What if your body's like, hey, we know what we're doing and we need to slow down in order to get us through this?
Right.
You know, I know you have, you said you had children, right? But you think about the different energy levels that you had throughout your pregnancy, right? Maybe you had like you were a superwoman and you could totally do that. But I mean, there were times during it where it was like, nope, time to kind of take a rest, right?
No, I remember being very tired during my pregnancy. My mom had 6 kids and she said she felt better and more energetic, which is probably why she had 6 kids.
Right. But there's a reason. I think that would be the very first thing, is like, there's a really, really good reason for why you're feeling what you're feeling. And the language of the body is emotion and sensation. So sensation, aka tired, aka hungry, aka moods, etc. That's how our body. And I like to think of, I love to personify the body. Ironically, I mean, it's kind of meta here, but I love to personify the body like she is here saying, hey, sweetheart, I'm going to tell you through the sensations. I'm going to tell you through the emotions, what we need. But most of us are running so fast in a very masculine dominated, toxic productivity, perfectionism kind of society. And so we don't learn to speak to her. We don't learn to hear her.
Right. Yeah. I love that, because it almost, like, even just hearing the way you describe it, like, as I imagine people hearing this, it's like, oh, we get to drop the guilt.
100%.
We get to understand that, like, this is actually supposed to happen. Right. I used to be a doula, a birth doula. And the way I would like explain to my clients how like their bodies are supposed to be tense. Their stomach is supposed to tense. So like, can you relax into it? If you don't think something is wrong, you can relax into it and let your body do what it's supposed to do. And I'm hearing you say the same thing. Like, you understand your body so that you can accept what's going on and maybe relax a little more.
You got it, sister. That's exactly right. Yeah. And the challenge can be when people start to head into perimenopause. Again, like I said earlier, there is often so much on people's plates, so much on people's plates. And if you are a mother and whatnot, the kids are getting to teenage years and lots of transition, and you might even be taking care of a parent or whatnot. You're at the height of your career, maybe, etc. So there's just so much. And so what I see with most women in our Western culture is that becomes so, I mean, it's there's so many levels to it, but it's just like we become addicted to it. We don't realize there's another way, and it's just the way that it is. And then the nervous system is like, hey, we can't do this anymore. Right. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The more that we realize, could we start to question, I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent here, but could we start to question the reason why I'm so busy?
Mm-hmm.
Could we start to question maybe why I have these thoughts? Like, if I am not productive and doing 9 million things during the day, then I'm not worthy and I'm not lovable and I'm not going to be safe and blah, blah, blah. Could we start to question that?
Right.
Because, and if I'm not taking care of like 100 people and, like the people pleasing things, questioning those three things, then we could really start to understand, oh, maybe that is not serving me. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
what served me is exactly what you said, relaxing into it,
Yeah.
understanding and learning about it. And I think we are at a huge deficit for education around this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huge deficit. There's a huge push in the UK. They've had televisions, they're even making legislature, and we're behind the times. But
Yeah.
anyway, kind of side
Yeah,
note
that
there.
reminds me of just kind of what we want our clients to understand, and what we're constantly reminding ourselves of too, is that we are worthy without the doing. Like, just because we're here, we are worthy of love and compassion and kindness and rest, and we're good enough if we just sit on the couch all day.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us don't desire to do that, but it's important to remind ourselves that, like, what we do in life, how busy we are, does not equal how much we are worth.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this practice this week of, just because I've noticed myself, like, as coaches, we could be in our business all day, every day, worried about our clients, worried about getting them results. Like, and I've been like just kind of laying in bed for about 5 minutes in the morning, just saying, before I get up, just remember, you could lay here all day and be good. You could lay here all day and be good enough. And you are worthy of love. You are worthy of relaxing throughout the day. If you need a nap today, schedule it in, right? Like, just kind of reminding myself of that for 5 minutes before I even get up. And it really has kind of helped me kind of welcome in more relaxation.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really powerful point, and what a good practice to and gift to give yourself, because what often happens, especially for that 8%, is the energy will go down depending on like how much stress is on your nervous system too. And there will be days where you're like, oh my gosh, I really can't get off the couch. And when you have the juxtaposed beliefs running in the background, like I have to be able to do stuff in order to be okay and to be safe and worthy, etc. Oh boy, that hurts.
Yeah.
And I had to work through that at the beginning, because I was a machine, and then all of a sudden, literally, I could not get off the couch for months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my body forced me to slow down and say, hey, it's time to learn a lesson that you're okay when you're just like on the couch too. What?
Yeah. So, really reminding ourselves that it's
Mhm.
okay. This stuff happens. Our bodies are supposed to do this. It's what's transitioning us to the next phase of life. It's a beautiful thing, even, right? What if we could look at ourselves like that? Like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful time. Yes, I'm experiencing all these things, but it's a beautiful time to slow down and remind myself of how amazing I am.
Totally agree. And to that note, I want to say two things. For that 20% of gals that kind of go through it just kind of smoothly-ish, that would be a beautiful, beautiful place for them to hang out, as well as all the others. And for that 80, especially the 80%, sometimes that will not be accessible.
So tell me about that.
Beautiful. This is beautiful
Yeah.
to access sometimes, because there's a lot of grief that can go along with this process. Just having your hormones fall will produce, for a lot of women, some pretty severe depression and anxiety.
So when does someone seek help on that?
So when your symptoms, and there are myriad symptoms, affect your quality of life, please trust your instincts, slow down and go get some help. So quality of life, what could that look like? I can speak for me, and I know I am part of that 20%. So that doesn't resonate for everybody, but there are a lot of people, like, I have a best friend, she's still going throughout life, but like hot flashes have taken over her life. So that's what we're talking about in terms of quality of life. Your sleep is usually, for at least that 80%, often hit like big time. And women wake up from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning and then sometimes can't get back to sleep. That in and of itself will affect quality of life. So when you're noticing, gosh, I can't function, when you're noticing apathy is another kind of emotional chemical experience that a lot of us will go through. Depression and anxiety, those are all very chemically connected. You'll feel like how it feels for most women that I've talked to. We feel kind of like the joy and the spark has been sucked out of us, because that's what happens when estrogen leaves.
Yeah.
Estrogen is that joyful spark, and then your testosterone also goes down, which also lends to that energy.
Right.
And so when you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't quite function, I mean, hopefully you'll get some help a little bit before that. But it's like when it affects your quality of life. And the challenging thing about that is doctors, even OBGYNs, are not trained in menopause. And I say that with so much love. I'm married to a physician and I've talked to lots of physicians in my life, but they are not trained. They are trained to put you on the pill for emotional thing or for hormonal things. And that's it.
Yeah.
Like I was told to be put on different, like, an IUD and all these things. I wasn't going to have children or anything like that. But I was like dying and none of it helped. So you want to find a practitioner that's actually trained. And as of last year, research showed that there were only about 7% of practitioners in the Americas that felt comfortably in North America that felt comfortable treating a woman in menopause. So let me give you a little hint here. Go to menopause.org, which is the National Association of Menopause Society, and they will have a list where you can go and find a practitioner, put in your zip code, and find somebody who is actually trained in the certification. That is in my opinion, one of the best places to start.
Okay.
Because they
I'll
will
link that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, they will actually have had like training.
Yeah.
So, and it's a really, really big difference from, and I honestly, I don't say this in any disrespect. It's just not part of the training. Just like nutrition is not part of the training for physicians. Like my husband, he's like, hardly got any nutrition training. What are you talking about? Like we're a whole body type of a thing. But also naturopaths. There are a lot of good naturopaths. I mean, I don't know how much you want to go into this on this call, but there are tons and tons of different things to look at in terms of finding good help and practitioners. That can also be one of the very frustrating things for women is we go in, and if there's a practitioner who's not trained or hasn't worked with this, we'll feel very invalidated and feel like, oh, here, just try the pill or just try blah, 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 or, make sure you stop eating blah, 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 and the information is not as potent as it is when somebody's actually had the training.
Yeah. So I have a lot of clients and listeners who are overseas, who are not in the States. So as they are thinking about this for themselves, what questions would they ask their practitioners to see if they know the right steps to take?
I would always start with a Google search, to be honest, because like I said, depending on where your listeners are, there's a huge push, like in the UK. I know that there is an Australian menopause society. So I would look for that first and foremost.
Great
Some
advice.
questions that I would ask a practitioner. I'm just thinking about trying to get into my practitioner, asking them questions. You'd have to set an appointment, obviously, and ask the questions. But the questions that I would ask is, tell me about your background in treating with women in menopause and your approach.
Yeah.
And then what I would be listening for is, have they actually prescribed hormone therapy? It's not called hormone replacement therapy. That's an old term, but have they ever prescribed hormone therapy? Have they prescribed, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone for women? And what is their view on prescribing those? I'm not trying to push that. If your symptoms are so bad, like they were with mine, my blood test said I hardly had any hormones in me. So that's why I needed to go this route.
Right.
Some other people might be able to go like a more natural route. And a naturopath those are some similar questions, like, how do you treat a woman in menopause? And you want to be listening, in my opinion, you want to be listening for someone who will work in tandem with you and not be like the heavy hand of, this is what I do and this is what I don't do. I went to a couple of different doctors here, and the one gal that I loved and felt really comfortable with, she's like, you know what, hun? She didn't say hun, that was me. But you know what? This is really an experiment. That's when you can relax and understand that they're going to work with you.
So it sounds like an experiment, and an experiment of really listening to your body, accepting what is, accepting that this is a beautiful process, and also accepting that extra help, that extra hormone help when and if you need it.
Absolutely. And there are lots of other natural things that you can do too. Herb-wise, I'm not going to talk about that, but for some people, I mean, they can't do hormones. So just kind of side note there too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I
was just going to say, and remember that if you can't get to the place in your head that this is a beautiful process, it's okay to be pissed about it too. Honor your emotions throughout the entire thing. I'm dead serious here, because this is a big piece, because the emotions are so all over the place. If you can't be in this space of like, this is a beautiful process, be like, whoa, this is natural. I like to think about it. I'm going into my cocoon and I'm going to come out my butterfly queen. And it just feels really tight right now in this cocoon, you know, but honoring, this is what's happening. This is my body. I'm not nuts.
Yes.
I'm not faulty in being able to think positively. No.
Yes. It's part of the heart of life. It's part of the 50-50. And like moving, like where, like, I love that you said, just accept it, like accept that it's hard, accept that you're angry right now.
Yes.
What a beautiful thing to give yourself permission to feel. And not,
I think that's like, honestly, Rachel, I think that's like 75% of the game for a lot of us. It's just like, wow, this sucks. This is hard. And saying it's okay that this is hard, and it might be hard for a while.
Yeah. Which, when you get really good at welcoming and accepting those, all the emotions, that's when the emotional eating component becomes something that can be manageable, right?
Not just the emotions. Yes. Yes. And
tell me.
Yeah. I think a lot of women don't realize that with the hormone changes, I mean, this is kind of my specialty. I'm an emotional coach for women around their food and body and whatnot. But I think a lot of us don't realize that because of just the hormone fluctuations and the stress on the nervous system in and of that themselves, we naturally go to those really primal sources of energy and soothing. And we don't realize it. And we're like, a lot of gals gain weight during this time, and that usually stresses their nervous system out. So I teach a lot about the nervous system and really understanding it and all of the different things that are affecting it at this time period. And so that's usually one of the biggest reasons for the emotional eating, right? And so it's not just understanding emotions, it's understanding all the reasons that the nervous system feels out of whack, that it feels overstressed, that it feels dysregulated. And it can be different pieces. It can be the sleep piece. It can be the, I am, gravitating towards more of the carby carbs that aren't super great for my body. And that's actually a huge stress for nervous systems at this time of life. So if we think about it as a foundation of understanding what the nervous system needs, and the emotional piece is absolutely part of that. But it's not the only part. Yeah.
So if someone is, if their body is craving those high carb foods, the sugary, floury foods, and their emotions are being numbed very temporarily by the high sugary foods, what would you say to that person? What would you say to begin? How would you begin to help them with that?
Usually I take people through the understanding of what's going on with their nervous system, and how sleep and how macro balance and how relationship stressors and emotional stressors and a myriad of things. I call them my 4 Ps: perfectionism and toxic productivity and people pleasing and pain, all kind of feed into that swirling at this time of life. And kind of just look at it from a very, very neutral space of, hey, sweetie, this isn't personal. Because what happens when those hormones drop the negative inner critic inside can get really loud, because estrogen and progesterone can be a bit of a buffer, and testosterone too can be a bit above a buffer to some of the negative voices that are in our heads.
Yeah.
And so just understanding, hey, this isn't you.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's maybe negative voices that, make you kind of want to just like eat whatever, or, kind of shame yourself or whatever, no, your nervous system is really going through a big deal here.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
going through a huge flux. So this isn't you,
Yeah.
AKA nothing's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
So what my clients always say is like, wow, oh, I feel so much relief just in and of itself, just understanding what's going on with the nervous system, what's going on with the hormones, all those things. Because everything else in the mind for most of us, like, something's freaking out, I'm dying here, and you're doing it wrong, and what the heck, and all these things. So just understanding, nope, you're okay. This is part of the process, and it's hard. And your nervous system actually needs calming, because it's going to fight, flight, and fawn, and sometimes freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, it's going to gravitate towards the fast carbs.
Right.
So I talk a lot about things to bring us up to the safety level of the nervous system, and understanding that, and connecting it to trauma if they've ever went, if they've ever gone through that. So
as I hear you talking about this, I'm thinking it's no wonder that so many relationships have a really hard time during this time, because when you're feeling, low energy, and your inner critic is on high, criticism mode, like I always say, like that, the higher your inner critic is, the higher your criticism of your partner is.
100%.
Because like, and because we don't like to criticize ourselves, so our brains are immediately going to want to shift blame, right? So we're just a cycle of criticizing ourselves, criticizing our partners, which feels like crap to everybody involved.
Totally. Perfect connection. 100 million%. Because if you think about it, I mean, literally everything in the brain is kind of rewiring. And what happens for most of us is you go through this kind of face with reality, face with mortality, and you start questioning, a lot of us start questioning everything. So some of those negative voices are about ourselves, and you nailed it on the head. I felt so peaceful and so proud of my relationship, to be really honest and really vulnerable, which I think I hope will help people. And it's been this last year, and I can't stop picking at him.
Right.
And he's so sweet. So I keep most of it inside my head until I explode, but we have a really great relationship where he can hold space for me and not take it personally as much as possible. But inside, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling all these things. And you're absolutely right. This is one of the, big times when people get divorced, is when the hormones shift for both men and women. And I don't love the term midlife crisis, but it's not just a male thing. It's a midlife transition that is usually blindsiding for both partners, for sure.
Yeah.
And in that process, I mean, speaking to your relationship people personally, and what I help people do, and what we need to do, is just be like, okay, wait a minute. What's going on with my body? What I have done is like just check all the negativity as best I can over here, and not make any rash decisions.
Right.
Out loud what I'm feeling as best as I can, and try to keep working with that partnership, and just let him know, I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I'm feeling all this rage and all this and that really happens when those hormones drop. It's real.
Yes. It's super helpful to have a partner who can hold space for you during that time. And, we can even think about it like how we hope to hold space for our teenagers as they're going through hormone shifts, which is, it's, an interesting time of life, right? Like we're going through these shifts, our teenagers are, our parents are going through their struggles. And it's a time where we actually need to slow down when life doesn't often offer that. So like building that connection and learning how to express what you're going through and welcome your partner into your inner world a little bit and what your body's feeling, and having those conversations is so important in helping them even know how to hold space for you. Because some people have to be taught to hold space.
Oh, it's not intuitive for sure.
Yeah.
And that's one
And
of the things that I'm really, go ahead. Sorry.
if we're constantly criticizing ourselves and them, we're not showing any example or helping anybody learn how to hold space. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just saying, and I'm grateful that we did that foundational work for how to hold space for each other, like intense, great classes and stuff before I got here. Because otherwise I would have been I've been out the door or whatever. And just so grateful that that foundation has been there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love for you to, is there anything else before we tell people where to find you? Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about on here that we haven't?
I think we've touched on it for the most part, to be really honest. I guess the other thing here, a lot of women, as I mentioned earlier, the body changes. And one of the biggest things that feels kind of blindsiding is like, holy crud, I'm, gaining some weight around my middle. And that's usually like a very in your face type of a thing. And there is a lot around that emotionally, because when estrogen drops, when progesterone drops, it does affect how our body metabolizes. It doesn't mean that we, can't eat some cookies now and again. But if you eat them every day, like I used to, I gain 100 pounds, right. And so there's this shift in understanding. It's essentially the idea of coming from maybe like what I like to call the princess archetype of how we've interacted with our body, or a young woman's driven by estrogen, which is we're really worried about what everybody thinks and being beautiful and all these things, to really coming into the queen of, okay, my body's doing this, and actually it's a Ferrari now, and it can't keep, eating the same things that it did when it was a little princess, to be honest. And so if we, and it can be hard, it can be kind of hard going through that thing, because we might have a lot of emotional stuff and some trauma and whatever, but it'll be like, but I used to be able to eat blah, 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 blah. And it's not to say that you can't, you just really have to understand how to fuel your Ferrari now.
Yeah, I love that analogy. What a beautiful analogy that is, of the queen who is a Ferrari.
Or Lamborghini, or your favorite wonderful car.
Yeah. So eating has stuff to do with it. Really accepting yourself, finding help when it gets to that desperate place. And I noticed on your website today that you have a 3-day workshop for people. Is that right?
It's a $19 workshop.
Oh, perfect.
You do. Yeah. Okay. And it's actually, I'm going to teach it again live November 15th to 17th. It's just $19, and it's the whole foundation of understanding. It's called How to Stop Eating Your Menopausal and Postmenopausal Feelings. And we really kind of dive into that nervous system stuff that I was talking about, and they get so much clarity and like peace and compassion. And that's really the whole point of why I'm on the planet, is to help create compassion and healing from the inside out around body, self, etc. So it's a really beautiful class where we really dive into those pieces of how to understand and unravel what's going on with your body, getting to the root cause of what's going on with your body and your emotions, how they're all interconnected hormonally, and then really kind of going into discovering the formula for how to shift that, heal that, so that it just integrates and you have this loving relationship with food and body. So you really know how to treat your Ferrari and be your Ferrari.
Right. Well, I know I'm going to be signing up for that workshop, and I want everyone else to sign up for it too. We're all going through this, and we can all use all the help that we can get. I will link to your website in the show notes, but just tell me what your website is, and tell our listeners where else they can find you.
You betcha. So my website is candywright.com, CandyWright.com. You can find me on Instagram at candy_wright_coaching. And I do have a couple of Facebook groups, and I do invite you to come into the one. It's called Holistic Menopausal and Postmenopausal Support for Women. And we talk about different things in there. I'm going to start having some different guests in there as well, but handling different pieces of this holistic process to really, and it's a free Facebook.
Yeah. Perfect. So exciting. Thank you for what you do in the world, Candy. It is
Thank
so
you.
important. And all right, I will point the listeners there, and I'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Joyful Love. If you'd like to know more about my work, come visit me at rachelcunningham.com. That's Rachel spelled with an AEL, Cunningham.com.